Hey people, John here from Fast Films, and today we're going to go through the 2006 crime comedy movie called Let's Go to Prison. The movie begins with a man named John Lashitsky giving a narration of the present prison statistics. According to him, there are over 2 million Americans currently in prison. John himself just got out of prison and went to purchase a gun. He states that he's been in prison 3 times and says that he was 8 the first time he was in prison. John returns from prison and becomes an even worse human. He gets sentenced to jail again for 4 years. After being released, John stupidly gets arrested trying to steal a car and receives another 7-year prison sentence. After serving his 3rd prison sentence, he plots to exact revenge on Judge Nielsen Biederman III, a well-respected but harsh judge who presided over each of his trials and passed him stiff sentences. John calls the courthouse under an alias to determine when Judge Biederman will be presiding over his next case, only to discover that he died 3 days before John's release. In a fit of rage, he gets a gun from his car and shoots up the telephone booth. John goes to a strip club to have a drink and discovers a newspaper article on Judge Biederman's son, Nelson Biederman. John turns his attention to the late judge's obnoxious son, Nelson Biederman IV. At a dedication ceremony for Judge Biederman, John breaks into Nelson's car and empties his emergency inhaler. After the ceremony, Nelson receives a card from his associate and tells him he is never attending another ceremony. He also demands that the assistant has a bottle of Fresca waiting for him at the office. John stalks Nelson in his van and observes Nelson having an asthma attack. Nelson runs into a local pharmacy, hyperventilating, and frantically searches through the shelves for a new inhaler. Nelson's erratic behavior horrifies the pharmacy owners who thinks he's a junkie seeking a fix. After Nelson finally finds an inhaler, he begins to use it. The pharmacy owner assumes he's a thief, and when Nelson holds up his inhaler over his head to prove he means no harm, the pharmacy owner mistakes the inhaler for a small gun and calls the police. The pharmacy owner's wife also brings out her gun in an attempt to protect the store. John, who's been watching the whole incident, sees this and takes out his real gun and fires a shot into the air. The gunshot sound further terrifies the pharmacy owner and the wife, who also fires a shot from her gun into her ceiling. Nelson gets arrested by the police, who have video footage of him at the store. In the next scene, Nelson calls his foundation and is told by the head of the legal team that he is being charged with felony assault. He demands that they do everything possible to have him acquitted. The board nearly complies with Nelson's demands, but as they are fed up with his behavior, they suddenly realize that this is an opportunity to get rid of him. They purposely conspired to provide him with a grossly incompetent defense team at the trial. John watches the court proceedings from the back of the court. Before the court case officially begins, Nelson approaches the judge and brags that he has the best legal team money can buy. He also brags to her that he knows he would only get a slap on the wrist due to his affiliation with the governor and tells the judge to make things quick. The judge tells him that she would make the case quick, but just because she dislikes him. The case begins with the introduction of the incompetent set of jurors. Nelson's lawyer, Mr. Hinckley, is called upon the judge to present Nelson's defense, and he purposely sabotages Nelson's case. The jury finds Nelson guilty, and he was sentenced to 3 to 5 years in state prison. John discovers that he's not satisfied with Nelson merely going to prison. While being with his friends, John is noticeably depressed. A knock is heard at the door, and he goes to open it. John immediately detects that they are undercover cops and decides to sell them the substances because he wanted to get sentenced to jail in order to make Nelson's life hell. Up next, John faces the judge and immediately pleads guilty. He successfully convinces the judge that he be sentenced to 3 to 5 years in the same prison Nelson will be incarcerated. On the bus to the prison, John befriends Nelson and asks him to be his cellmate. Nelson opens up to him that some guys in the holding cell were giving him the cold shoulder, and John consoles him. In the next scene, the inmates arrive at the prison, where the warden gives them a stern warning. He tells them that if they have any problems with their welfare at the prison or with how he runs the prison, they can shove it up their behind. John bribes one of the prison guards and tells him to put in the same room as Nelson. In their cell room, Nelson breaks down in tears, and John tells him that he has to be tough. An associate of John brings him his mail, and John introduces him to Nelson. Nelson tries to make a mean face, but only gets mocked by the guys because he just looked funny. Afterwards, they go to get food, and John tells Nelson that about 20% of prisoners are not Americans. He gives a rundown of the different notorious gangs running the prison. While they eat, John tells him that he should stand up from his seat at exactly 11:15. Nelson thinks this is a prank and continues to talk. Suddenly, John jumps up from his seat, and a strange man hurts another inmate right on their table. The guards come in and find Nelson at the table with the injured man. They ask him who started the fight, and Nelson ignores them. The guard hits Nelson with the baton and asks the question again. This time, John signals to Nelson to talk, and he points out the inmate responsible for the fight. Back in their cell, John tells Nelson that he should never have snitched on another inmate. Nelson is shocked by this and tells John that he told him to tell the truth. John tells him that he never meant for him to tell the truth, and now some of the inmates might want to take him out. He tells Nelson that from now on, he has to do exactly as he says. Afterward, gang leader Barry makes passes at Nelson in the bathroom. John defends Nelson and tells Barry and every other inmate that Nelson belongs to him. In the next scene, Nelson meets his lawyer and tells him to do whatever it takes to get him out of prison. Hinckley tells him that he currently does not have access to his funds from his foundation's account because he's no longer chairman of the foundation. Nelson tries to adjust to prison life but keeps facing different challenges, including being punched in the face daily by a prisoner, John bribes, finding strange objects in his food, and getting gifted a pencil from the toilet. Afterward, Barry tries to purchase Nelson from John, and he agrees to sell him for an ounce of grass and 4 cartons of cigarettes. Back in the cell, a guard comes in and puts John on garbage duty. It's revealed that John bribed the guard to get him out of the cell so that Barry's men can come to abduct Nelson. Nelson meets Barry, who, despite the intimidating appearance, is sensitive and a romantic man. He offers Nelson a cup of his finest toilet-made Merlot. Barry asks him if his buttocks looks big in his trousers, and Nelson tells him no. Barry is angry at this and threatens Nelson with a knife for lying. He lets him go but warns him never to lie to him again. Barry tells him he is now his property and asks him for an Eskimo kiss. Nelson tells him that he can't, but he eventually does so. He then gets chorused into a relationship with Barry, who promises to take things slow with him. Up next, Nelson writes to his pen pal, a little kid, and tells him about his experiences in prison. Nelson gets informed about a prison gang leader, Leonard, who vowed to take him out, would be released from solitary confinement soon. Nelson becomes afraid that he'd be taken out soon by Leonard. John tells him that Leonard will not take him out immediately, but might beat him up every day for as long as possible until he eventually takes him out. Nelson also finds out that the inmates have been placing bets on where he would get taken out. Nelson decides to approach Leonard in order to apologize for snitching on him. While he tries to apologize, Leonard attacks him with a fork. Leonard tells him that it took a lot of guts for him to stand up to him. He tells him that only his father has ever stood up to him, and he would take Nelson out the same way he took out his father. John tells Nelson that he has 3 options: to take himself out, fight Leonard, or let Leonard take him out. He eventually suggests that Nelson get himself sent to solitary confinement, where he could get a private cell. John knocks out a guard while standing behind Nelson and gets him sent to solitary confinement. There, Nelson gradually loses his mind and begins to suffer from hallucinations. Nelson is released after 2 days and tries to get some harmful chemicals to take himself out. He collects chemicals made from cleaning boats in a syringe and writes a final letter to his pen pal, who reads it to his second-grade classmates. Leonard comes from Nelson and attacks him in his cell. Nelson fights back and the syringe falls out of his pocket. Leonard assumes it to be heroin and ejects himself with it, accidentally killing himself. Nelson drags his body out of his cell and claims victory for Leonard's death. He tells the other gang members that he did what he had to do. Nelson earns the respect of the other gang members and becomes their leader. He goes to the bathroom and is approached by Barry. Nelson tries to brag about his new status and punches Barry twice in the face. Barry angrily grabs him and begins to choke him. Nelson apologizes and Barry sets him free. Moments later, a bunch of mobsters enter the bathroom and attack Barry, but Nelson tells them to stop and gives Barry a free pass. Guards burst into the bathroom and John, who is just an innocent bystander, gets sent to solitary confinement. 3 weeks later, John is brought out of confinement and finds out that Nelson has become the top guy in the prison. He appreciates John for looking out for him in prison and making him who he is. John gets mad at this and trashes the room. Nelson reaches his 1-year parole hearing and is now fond of Barry. Back in his cell, John tells him that he's proud of him. He offers him a can of Fresca to congratulate him on his parole. Unknown to him, the drink is spiked, and Nelson passes out. At the parole meeting, Nelson does not realize that a white power slogan has been tattooed by John on his forehead, causing Nelson's parole to be denied. Enraged, Nelson confronts John, who then confesses to framing him and causing him to end up in jail. They begin to fight, but the fight is soon stopped by the guards. The guard then sets up a death match between both of them. Inmates and some of the guards begin to place different bets on the fight between John and Nelson. Nelson receives a visit from Barry, who has now been set free by the parole board. He thanks Nelson for turning him into a new man and breaks down in tears. He tells Nelson that he needs to get him out, but Nelson tells him that the only way he's getting out of jail is in a body bag. Nelson devises a smart plan and calls Hinckley. He tells him that he's adopted a son and has transferred control of the foundation to his son. Barry enters the office and kicks Hinckley out. Up next, guard Shanahan is summoned by the warden, who warns him that if he has anything illegal planned with the inmates, he would be arrested. The warden reveals that he was joking and places a bet on the fight between John and Nelson. On the day of the fight, they are both told whoever gets taken out first loses. They both begin fighting and use different prison-made weapons on each other. While fighting, they both bring out a syringe and eject one another. The guards and prisoners, believing that they are dead, bury the pair in the graveyard. Hinckley officially transfers all of Nelson's assets to Barry at Nelson's funeral. When everyone leaves, Barry digs open the grave and brings out Nelson, who has now woken up. A flashback reveals that John and Nelson had hatched a plan to eject themselves with a coma-induced chemical during the fight. Barry bribes the mortician to skip the autopsy. Nelson hesitates in digging John out of the grave, but Barry convinces him to do so. Barry digs him out and Nelson tells him that they are now even. John, Nelson, and Barry begin a new chapter of life. They start a winery and host wine tasting. The wine taster refuses to try the wine because it smells bad. John comes in and threatens the wine taster and forces him to give them 100% in his review. The wine taster agrees and everyone drinks the toilet wine. The movie ends with John, Barry, and Nelson singing and dancing while driving down the road. Thanks for watching, guys.